All right. Well, can you just go through your story and growing up and your family background to start with?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and my dad was a lineman. My mom was worked for Social Security office, and my parents really was blessed in the home that I grew up in. Even though my dad wasn't in church, he was very involved in our lives, and I did a lot with my dad, hunting, fishing. He was into sports. I was into sports. So we had a really good relationship. So I look back on it now and I see what a good foundation that gave me, even from that aspect. And then it was my mom that kept me in church. So that I got to hear the gospel Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. And then actually, as far as my salvation testimony, I was 8 years old, and the teacher was teaching on Matthew 7, verse 13 and 14 about the narrow way and the broad way. And it was
Hmm.
during that time that I realized I was on the wrong way, and the Lord used that.
Did you feel a call to preach then, or was that later in your
That was,
life?
that was a little bit later, Jack. I mean, it's funny because I can look back. There's some things even I wrote down as a 5-year-old that, when I grew up, I wanted to be either a preacher, a farmer, or a baseball player, so that was early on. I didn't even remember doing that, but it was, I went through kind of a time in my junior high years where I was in church but away from the Lord, from maybe fifth grade through eighth grade. But about age 14, I had my pastor's son who invited me to go to youth rallies and youth camp and youth conference, and so God really used that. So, in fact, I just got to revisit Mountain View Baptist Youth Camp in the Somerset, Monticello, Kentucky area. And that's when I first discerned God's call in my life to preach. And I wasn't even really spiritually where I should have been. But I remember distinctly walking up to the tabernacle there at Mountain View, and one of the men of our youth group was preaching, and the Lord just really impressed in my heart, I want you to do that. I dismissed it at that point, but then as I got closer to the Lord, I began to have a desire to. And actually, Matthew 14 is pretty special to me because that's where Peter, who was invited to step out, in the out of the boat and walk on water, he said,
Hmm.
"Lord, if it's thee, bid me come." So I began to pray that way. God, if you're calling me to preach, then I want to surrender to your will to preach. And so God continued to confirm that, gave me a desire to preach, and thus on August the 1st, 1991, age 15, I surrendered to preach.
Did you have any career aspirations before that of stuff you maybe wanted to do?
No, I mean, other than just every boy's dream of playing in Major League Baseball, but I was quickly coming to a determination that probably wasn't
Yeah.
going to happen. It was a harsh reality, but
Did you
but
go to
no,
Bible
not
college
really.
after? Did you go to Bible
Yeah,
college after
yep.
graduating?
Went to Bible college after that. Went to Baptist Bible College, Springfield, Missouri. Um, Actually, during my high school years, so I started when I was 15, so I was about a sophomore. I took a geography class just to pray and God, if you want me in missions, and show me a place to pray about. So India came into the focus there. I was also learning Spanish, and so things missions related were pretty um, prominent in my life at that point. So I entered into Baptist Bible College. They had a very strong missions program. So I was a missions major, thought for sure I'd be going to India, and um, prayerfully preparing that way. Obviously, taking a lot of classes that were also offered to pastoral majors. From my home pastor, I think that gave me a pastoral type heart. And but then just praying through Bible college about God's leadership, and then went on into the graduate school there for the next 2 and 3 years, actually,
Hmm.
total three. And during that time of grad school, I was doing my missions internship under Brother Jeff Copes, who is now the executive vice president of Heartland Baptist Bible
Hmm.
College. So that was a neat connection. He was pastor. I we got married and moved our membership there to work under his leadership with the college and career age. while I was doing my missions internship there at the church and going through grad school. So that was the combo. But then when Brother Copes came here literally 25 years ago this next month, then he asked me what I prayed about being pastor there at the church in Republic, Missouri, right outside of Springfield, Missouri. And I almost instantly knew that's what I was supposed to do, though I was a bit confused about, okay, well, what about India? What about missions? And so it's neat to look back and see how God used that experience there, even in
Hmm.
pastoring, that just confirmed I was to pastor. I'm still open to missions even today, but I know I'm where I'm supposed to be here at Southwest Baptist Church. But it was really that step towards Meadowview Baptist Church, college and career, pastoral ministry that eventually led to Brother Davison, Sam Davison, asking, would you consider coming to work with the college age and even with the possibility of a transition in pastoral ministry? And so all of that led to Southwest Baptist Church, which is in my heart and mind a very missions oriented church. So I can see how God was using all of that to prepare me to be a pastor that tries to be missions minded as well.
So you were involved in Southwest Baptist Church before you became pastor.
So it was 7 years learning from Brother Davison, um, directly, and then just by observation.
Hmm.
And we had conversations along the way about the transition and possible transition, but no timeline to it. And so then in 2006, I believe it was, he let the church know that he was eventually going to transition into not being pastor, continuing as Bible college president. And then in 2008, he put a timeline on it, 2 years from now. And what we did actually, Brother Jack, is in 2009, we voted a year in advance that we would make that transition, that
Hmm.
I would become pastor in 2010. He would become pastor emeritus. And so that 7 years of preparation was huge.
Hmm.
Really helped. Really helped.
Uh, did you have any mentors, obviously, besides Pastor Davidson
Jason.
coming into pastorate?
Absolutely. I would definitely include on that list Brother Jeff Copes because of his role, even still at Heartland Baptist Bible College. But my home pastor had a big impact on my life, like I mentioned earlier about the pastoral type of ministry. And my father-in-law, who at the time was my youth pastor, he had a big impact. Brother Joe Decker, senior, and of course, now family. So he continues to be a big mentor and impact. And but a lot of good godly friends along the way too, and men that still are influencing my life. Dave Hardy, definitely would be one that I've looked to for a model of ministry
Hmm.
and example. You know, and so those individuals and men would definitely be on the list, and no doubt there'd be others I'd add to that. Even since I've moved here, that continue to be an example. But those would be the early formative examples that I had that shaped the way that I go about pastoral preaching ministry.
Are there anything that they specifically helped you with, or maybe some lessons you learned in your
Yeah,
early years?
probably it was like the heart for people. I watched
Hmm.
them care about people and really pour themselves into it. For example, my home pastor, my dad had some heart issues, so he was always there at the hospital with us and just loving on my family and helping us. And then in terms of even preaching, of course, all these men, really were faithful to preach the word and to preach it in a very engaging way. Brother Davison, especially, I mean, he preached camp for us when I was 16. So I remember meeting him for the first time. Angie and I both were 16, and then he remembered us after that. He's gifted in remembering people's names, but he works hard at it is one thing. But he really impressed me, just the way he preached the Bible, with such clarity and conviction, and just really walked through the passage and built the case.
Hmm.
and conveyed the key idea, the central idea of the text, and then applied it in ways that you couldn't shake free from it. So that really inspired me to desire to have a ministry of just trying to preach the Bible,
Hmm.
demonstrating its relevance and making application. So those would be, I'd say, the big rocks, of ministry. And my home pastor gave me a real love for missions.
Hmm.
Brother Decker really gave me a real love just for illustrations, and he's kind of, I don't, you may not know him, but he's really known for being pretty illustrative in his delivery, and so that gave me a love for illustrations probably, and so that those would be some of the factors. Brother Copes has helped me on administration, just understanding administrative things and getting things done, and just trying to leave things better than the way we found them. That type of thing. It's been a real neat journey.
So when you became pastor of Southwest, when did you transition to becoming president of Heartland Baptist Bible College?
Good question. So I became pastor in 2010, and then I became president in 2018. So we had 8 years there where Brother Sam was still carrying the load on that, which was fantastic, because that was a big change, as you might imagine, to add
Hmm.
that presidential role. And obviously, it couldn't be done if there weren't good men and ladies alike that are at Heartland Baptist Bible College and here at Southwest Baptist Church that even make that a possibility. So,
Hmm.
but that's when that took place, 2018, and um, in May of 18.
What did that feel like, taking on that whole new responsibility from just being pastor to then being president of the college?
Um, the weight of it, I think I feel weekly. Um, it was exciting. I've always loved Bible college and Bible college students. I love education. I can actually be a bit nerdy. Um, so I love educating. I love training. I love trying to pass on. I love trying to inspire. So that's the side of it I absolutely love. Then there's part of it that I didn't have a whole lot of experience in, and so I've been growing or trying to grow and learn, working with other pastors and other churches, because Heartland is set up in a very unique way where there's several churches that are involved in the ministry. And so I was familiar with it, but I hadn't been involved in that side of it. And then making decisions that affect the students, everything from tuition to building needs that we have and development and growth, and so it's been quite a journey. I've really enjoyed it. And the biggest factor probably has been a time management dynamic, just to try to make sure that I'm not neglecting family, church to
Hmm.
do the presidential role. I think about it this way, Brother Jack, and I heard a preacher say this: I'm a person, a parent. Sorry, hang on. I'm a person, my relationship with God. I'm a partner, my relationship with my wife. Then I'm a parent, relationship with my kids, and then I'm a pastor, and then in my case, a president. So, and if I keep it in that order, it works right. Um, and I feel like I'll be the best kind of president if I can be the right kind of pastor.
Yeah.
So that's my main approach. I mean, I do things it's definitely that presidential hat, but most everything I do, even as a pastor, it's focused even on that.
Hmm.
I mean, that's really, I think, how this thing works. Because if I couldn't just give myself completely to that presidential role, because then I'd be negligent of my duties as a pastor, and vice versa. So the church is very generous and kind and thoughtful and supportive. I mean, it's challenging, obviously, as you might imagine, to do both.
Hmm.
Um, Either one's a full time job, but it somehow it works. Yeah,
Do you also teach classes at the college?
I do. Yeah. So I just taught today. On Fridays, I teach pastoral preparation in the fall, responsibilities in the spring. It's a 2 hour class for third year guys. So I've got a class of about 53 in there. It's really a neat group of guys. And then on Thursdays, I teach the homiletics class. The third year, again, it's third year guys. So I spend a lot of times with those guys. But it's homiletics. It's a 3 hour class. We meet from 8:30 to till chapel time, and then in the spring we do what we call practice preaching. And I teach a grad school class, but it's just one that meets about 4 times, called Old Testament studies in the fall, New Testament studies in the spring, and it's more of a guided experience for them, directed readings and directed projects. So I'm just touching base with them, make sure they stay on track. It's not as heavy of a teaching role.
I imagine that's really such a privilege to also pastor the church,
Yes,
but also teach in the college and be
I
president of the
love
college
it.
and invest in the younger generation.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So what I try to do, like in the homiletics class, I might even talk to them about what went into the development of that message, or what went wrong. Why didn't it get across right? And but I'll show them some examples. We use Microsoft Teams, and so I'll even load some sermons up on for them to look at. And if we're talking about how to identify the subject of a passage and then the complement of a passage, then we'll walk through that and I'll show them what I did there. So I try to make it as hands-on as I can, both with the preaching class
Hmm.
and the pastoral class.
Are there any initiatives or projects that are going on at Southwest or Heartland right now?
Yes, yeah. So at the church, we are renovating our adult Sunday school classrooms, and so this year we did two this summer that would become the model for the rest of the classes, and so we're just going to try to do those incrementally. So that's a big project, and we've also have a pretty sizable project going on as to replacing air conditioners and HVAC units.
Hmm.
There's 14 that needed to be replaced, and so we're just taking those a little bit at a time. Then actually, we've got a pretty major project going on in our. We have a basement where we have some Sunday school class and assembly room areas, but it's a rather large project of a sewer line replacement and digging up the basement. It's about a 3 foot deep trench right now, and so some of the men of Southwest got together yesterday, hauling dirt out. We had a work day. Which the neat thing about that is that 50 some years ago, well, the auditorium in the basement was finished in 1974, so a little bit over that. The men of Southwest then, in many ways, hand dug certain parts of the basement at least, and so now this many years later, the new generation of men at Southwest are replacing some of what those men did. So obviously, what they did lasted a long time, but now we're doing our part a generation later. It's pretty neat.
So is the one that was built in 74, was that the college or the church?
That's the church. Yeah, that's the
Okay.
auditorium at the church. Yeah, it was built with the basement, and then the auditorium that would seat. Well, right now we probably seat around 1,500, 1,600 in there, perhaps. It was built at like seating 2,300. I'm not sure if we could. We would be tight to put that many in there, but even back when Brother Harrison was the pastor, Brother Bert Harrison, and they built that, they'd seen steady growth. I think at the time they were running right around 800, and so they kind of thought, okay, well, this is too big for what you have. But I think God gave him a vision for growth,
Yeah.
and then under Brother Davison's ministry, it grew, and then the next thing that came college, moving to Oklahoma City. So it's neat looking back how that God used that building project to help make room for a Bible
Hmm.
college moving here, and they didn't know it
Yeah.
back in when they did that in the 70s. So anyways, that's at the church. At the school, we've kind of renovated all the buildings. The preaching chapel is it still feels new to us, but I'm forgetting what year it opened. But anyways, we're setting aside funds right now for a new dorm. We're seeing growth. We've got a access to a former Bible college that has some dorms. It became available to us, and so we've got about 3 rooms we're using to house guys now off campus because we're out of room on campus comfortably. We could pack some guys in and make their semester a little less comfortable. But
Mm.
anyways, we're seeing growth right now on the guys and girls side. So we're setting aside funds there. So that would be a big project coming up. And there's always something else that needs attention,
Yeah.
at the school. I mean, we've renovated a lot of the classrooms. There's still some to go. We still would need to do some renovation in the gym, but we've changed the roof. We secured it. It was leaking, so we got that done, and then some AC units replaced. And so there's been quite a bit. Year by year, we try to tackle some projects.
And when was Southwest started?
1951. So
1951.
our
Wow.
75th anniversary is next November. So we're about to
Wow.
celebrate our 74th. And so it's really a neat journey. The first pastor was J. Oscar Wells. He was meeting with some folks from Grace Baptist Church here in Oklahoma City, and that was become the sending church and the planting church for Southwest. But J. Oscar Wells was a missionary to China, and actually it was captured. It was a POW in the sense
Hmm.
of all that was going on there. Came back. Um, and was used of God to start the church, and then others came in behind him. Bert Harrison was here for 29 years. Brother Sam was pastor for 20 years. I've been pastor the last 15, going on 16 years come May. Um, and so, yeah, kind of a rich history of
Wow.
longevity in that sense. So it's been pretty neat.
Yeah, it's a mark of God's
Yeah.
faithfulness and how He's.
Yes. Yes. Well said. You got it.
So I know Southwest wasn't always linked to Heartland, was it?
Good. Yeah. Yeah. Let me explain that. So the school moved here from California because of Southwest's presence. And
Okay.
so they contacted Brother Sam, would you be interested in the school moving to Oklahoma City? Prices were pretty expensive, and the school was struggling really in San Dimas, California. And so the leadership of the school asked him, would you consider moving it here? And so since 1998, so 27 years, it's been here. And so
Hmm.
we are the host church. So Heartland is its own entity, and Southwest, of course, is a local church. So there's a lot of churches that are involved in Heartland, and the support of it. So it's a local church oriented school in what we teach. We don't believe in the universal church or and such. So we teach and preach, just what the Bible teaches regarding local
Hmm.
church. But Heartland is technically not a ministry of Southwest, although all the first year students predominantly come here unless they live in the area. And they have opportunity in their sophomore, junior, senior year to get
Hmm.
involved in an area church. But all of them, and most of them stay here, they get pretty involved in a lot of the ministries, learning ministry, and so forth. But I consider us the host church to the Bible college.
Hmm.
And so we do things like adoptive student ministry, where parents or members of this church adopt students to be a host to them while they're here. And then we try to lead the way, because the students are only here 9 months out of the year, most of them. So we don't build the church on student help. We try to let the students come
Hmm.
in alongside of Southwest members
Yeah.
who are teaching Sunday school and working bus routes, etc. So,
So you became president of Heartland in 2018, pastor Southwest in 2010. So how many years of ministry have you had since uh, college or starting pastoring the church?
well, that's a good question. Let's see, I did from 1998 to 2003. I was at Meadowview Baptist Church. So those 5 years there in college and career for about 2.5 years or so, almost three. And then I was pastor there at Meadowview for 2.5 years, almost three. That's kind of almost a break. So there's 5 years there. And then, the preparation time, getting ready to serve the 7 years as college and career and assistant pastor to Brother Davison, whatever would be needed there. So there's that 12-year span, and then the last 15 years, of pastoral ministry at Southwest,
And
and
so you,
it overlaps, with the college role.
mhm. And so you've been preaching and teaching all that time. What
Yeah,
are some, I know we touched on this earlier, but what are some things that you learned maybe preaching wise and
yeah.
maybe your philosophy on biblical preaching?
There you go. Yeah, it's a great question.
Hmm.
In fact, our hermeneutics class here begins that process as M.W. Lorenz, he pastors in the area, but he talks to the students about the aim of the passage, the AIM, the author's intended meaning.
Hmm.
And so then when we come into homiletics, then our goal, our responsibility, in fact, just like I've heard Brother Ed Pearson say that, as preachers, we're heralds of the king, and every herald is sworn to preciseness. So during the days of kings, they would send out a herald to make announcement. Well, that herald was to say just what the king said. He couldn't come up with his own message out there. He had to say what the king said. So that I consider my role as a preacher in the same way. It's a sacred mission and task that I got to say what the king said. And
Hmm.
I want to be true to the author's intent ultimately, which is God. So, like, for example, right now I'm preaching through the Gospel of Luke. We take an expository approach to preaching, passage by passage, to identify the what we call around here affectionately the CIT of the passage, the central idea of the text,
Hmm.
the author's main subject and his answer. You could actually talk about it this way: what's the big question? What's the big answer? Or answers if it's a list, but the central idea of the text. And so my goal is to preach in such a way that we're Luke in the congregation. And he heard me preaching like I'll get ready to out of Luke 9 this Sunday. If he heard me preaching, that he would say, that's exactly what the Holy Spirit of God gave me to write.
Hmm.
But if Luke says, I don't have a clue what you're talking about, that's nowhere near what the Spirit gave, then I'm off.
Yeah.
And it may be true. It may be true with a capital T, but is it true to that text?
Yeah.
So, from the pulpit side of this, I want to make sure that I'm preaching the author's intent and in a very engaging and interesting way that demonstrates two things: the relevancy of the passage. I don't make it relevant, I just show its relevance, that it's tied to life. And then,
Hmm.
two, the application. Okay, in light of this truth, in light of this central idea of the text, what am I supposed to do with it? And so, try to do that week by week, message by message.
How long does it take you to write a singular sermon?
Good question. I'm going to say at least 8 hours, start to
Okay.
finish, times three. So it's if I've got the kind of time to really let it just like permeate my thinking, then I divide it into three parts: study, structure, and style. Study the passage, identify the author's intent and idea, put that in a structure that can be conveyed to get across that idea. And then style would be, okay, what are some things that would help people to listen?
Hmm.
So that process, start to finish, I mean, I've never just like did a time clock on it, but I would imagine it would come out to be about 6 to 8 hours if I'm feeling pretty good and ready for it, you know. So I divide that up
Uh-huh.
over the course of a week and do part of that on one day and then come back to it the next day. And then it's the approach of attack, rest, attack, rest until it's done.
So you've been preaching and teaching all this time, and the Lord has definitely used you greatly. And whether it's a salvation testimony or a changed life, is great in and of itself.
Yeah, yeah,
But are
yeah.
there any specific memories or amazing ways God has provided in your ministry that are memorable?
Well, I mean, thankfully they're still happening, so it's been pretty neat um, to watch and see
Hmm.
that. Even just this week, I preached a revival up in Nebraska, and there was a man that came. And at first, he was just coming for the dinner that they were serving before the church service. And he told me the next day or two, he said, "Actually, I didn't intend to stay for the message. I was just going to leave,
Hmm.
and he left. I thought, man, he left because we ate together, but I noticed that he left. But he came back. He heard the message on the life of Jacob. It was almost a 1-to-1 correlation where he was living. And he said, "Could I talk to you after the sermon, after the message, and you and the pastor?" So the three of us sat down. The pastor, I just deferred to him, let him take it. Pastor Chadberry did a great job, and met with him the next morning, got to lead him to Christ, and then he came the rest of the week, and that's on my heart and mind, just rejoicing in that still. But as far as memories, it's just, I guess in many ways, it's just the overall total experience.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and there's tough things that happen. It's not
Hmm.
all easy, of course. I mean, Brother Davison often says, and he's quoting someone, I think, but if it was easy, second grade girls would be doing it. As far as leading
Yeah.
in the ministry, so it's not easy, but it is enjoyable. And there are challenges, but it's neat to watch God just
Hmm.
lead the way. There's scary moments, for lack of better terms, but then you see God just come through, and man, it's awesome.
Yeah. I like when the testimonies of when God provided, and there might not have been any other way that we could
Mhm.
provide, and then He jumps out and
Yes.
uses that.
Yeah, I'm excited for you to get to see even more of that. You've seen it in being in a church planter's home and a pastor's home, but I'm excited for you to get to experience that firsthand.
So, with preaching in the college, would you give any advice to young people in ministry or people who are wanting
Mhm.
to go into the ministry and preach and pastor?
I would say what God did in your heart as a young man or lady at camp or conference or however, don't lose sight of that. That's going to be the foundation for a lifetime of ministry. Keep thirsting for God, not just His help, but for Him.
Hmm.
So don't get focused on His blessings to the neglect of being focused on Him. You know, um,
Hmm.
and it's subtle because I think sometimes we know we need God's help for the next sermon. We know we need God's help for the next decision and all that you got to deal with, and that'll come. So I would say to your generation right now, people your age and maybe younger, maybe a little bit older, just enjoy the process, enjoy the journey, not just the destination.
Hmm.
Enjoy these years right now when you don't have the full weight of ministry responsibility on you, and learn to get a heart for God.
Yeah.
And that'll be enough for you for a lifetime of ministry.
Hmm. Yeah. I feel like having a right relationship with God will, in your early years especially, will lead into years of ministry and a right relationship with God
Yeah,
later.
you got it. That's key.
So it
Yeah,
starts early with us now.
that's right.
If I'm not doing what I'm supposed to, and if we're not doing what we're supposed to,
Right.
then it can
Right.
affect.
It really can. It really does. Yeah. So, I just read this morning in Jeremiah 12. If you've run with the footmen and they've wearied thee, as God is speaking to Jeremiah, He's basically saying, if you think it's tough now, just wait. you know. And it's not that it's not tough right now in y'all's life. As you're making some big decisions, and I remember some of that being confusing, but enjoy it right now, while you're running with the footman, so to speak, and that's not to say, I mean, there's some people your age that are really going through a lot of unique challenges, but you don't have family responsibilities on you right now. You don't have all the ministry responsibilities on you right now. So learn like you're saying, to develop a genuine, um, growing relationship with God.
Hmm. Well, just in closing, if we're all remembered by something when we're
Mm.
gone, what is one thing you would want to be remembered by in your life?
Well, probably just that I had to walk with God,
Hmm.
and tried to live out of it, out of that walk.
Hmm. and that starts early, and then it transitions into what
You
you do
got it.
your full life.
You
Well,
got it.
I loved having you on the show. It was an honor, and I
Oh, good.
appreciate you taking the time to do all this. Uh,
Yeah.
I ask everyone this, but do you use Apple or Android?
Apple.
Apple.
Yeah. How about you?
Yes, Apple.
Yeah.
Everything. Can't do
Yeah.
it. I
Apple.
actually I tried switching to Windows once.
Yeah. Now I do use
Completely.
Windows. I do use Windows, but my phone is Apple. Although, I mean, I my computer, is PC, and
Mhm.
I'm using Word and all that. So that way. But anyways,
I've had to switch to Word recently for school, and I just love Google Docs. I cannot do Word.
I can imagine. I'm probably just I'm doing what works, and I've got people
Hmm.
around me that know tech, but I don't know a lot about it. So I'm
Well, thank you. It's been an honor having you on the show.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to do it. Thanks for having a heart for it. I hope that it can be a help to others, to you, and then to whoever else that it goes to.